Hello, this is Dean Takahashi from VentureBeat. I'm here with Steve Russo, who's the creator of the very first video game. How you doing, Steve?
Well, I have a little problem with first because there were games on computers before Spacewar. But Spacewar was very influential because it circulated all through lots of colleges and universities, so everybody who was interested in computers in the 1960s knew about it. And it eventually turned into an arcade game, and eventually turned into a home video game. And
I remember playing it on the in the arcades a lot.
And the people who did the arcade version realized that you could use the same machinery to make a single-player game by having dumb asteroids flying around at you. And that's the origin of the Asteroids game, which is still available.
Yeah, it looks very similar, and here it is right here. Well, we're here in the Computer History Museum and in Mountain View, California, and this is really all the original stuff. You did this back in 1961?
This was 1961 and 1962. The final version of Spacewar went out to the Digital Equipment Users Group in May of 1962, and you could get it for free just by asking.
So what's the machine behind us here?
This is a PD-1. This is not the one from that I used at MIT. This is one of the last ones built, but we restored it at the Computer History Museum, and it's running the original version of Spacewar. Eventually, the manufacturing line would load Spacewar onto the computer before it shipped, the last thing. And field service, when they unpacked the computer, would check it was okay, and then turn it on and start Spacewar. And if it ran, then they would call the customer over and say, see, it works.
So in Spacewar, it's basically two spaceships that are floating around or flying around in space and shooting at each other. And right in the center is a sun with actual gravity. So how did you get that to work? How did you start?
How do you mean how?
This wasn't easy to do way back then, right? I mean, this is not something you could program in 5 minutes, right?
Almost. It wasn't 5 minutes. It was more like a month. But it was definitely a spare time project. It's only 2,000 lines of machine language, so it's not a huge program by any standards.
How much memory did you have to deal with it?
The machine we had 4,000 words, 18-bit words of memory. And Spacewar uses about half of it for program and about half for data. So we just played around here. You got me twice, and I got you once. Yes.
So that's cool. It's amazing that this still works after all this time. I mean, you guys must have spent a lot of work putting this together.
Well, it turned out that there was a lot of work. It wasn't exactly where you would expect. The computer hadn't run for about 20 years. So there was a bunch of standard stuff we knew we had to do, that things that wear out after 20 years have to get repaired. And we did that. And then the computer itself mostly worked. There were some lingering problems with memory, which eventually we fixed. But we spent most of the time on the I/O gear. That took the display and the paper tape punch hiding in here, and the paper tape reader and the typewriter.
You got your actual controls here too, right?
Well, they're in the spirit of the original controls, but they use the high reliability, long life buttons that were developed for arcade games about 10 years after I wrote Spacewar. But it's very homemade, and that's the way they were originally. What happened was Digital shipped the machines with enough extra spare modules so that you could hook up 18 bits of switch input without buying anything except wires. And so everybody added the spaceship controls on. The reason you can't control Spacewar from the switches But it's got two problems. One is your elbows get very sore very quickly. And the other is you get a crick in your neck because you're always turning to watch the display. So it didn't take very long for people to build control panels like these.
People stayed up all night playing this, I guess?
Oh yeah. The sun was coming up when I finished the last tuning session on Spacewar.
So you're responsible for a lot of lost productivity over time, I guess, right? The last 50 years?
Well, I look at it as training in flying spaceships.
So getting people ready to do some real work then.
Well, or build better games. One of the features of Spacewar is it's sufficiently simple that whenever anyone found themselves with spare time and a display and a computer that didn't play Spacewar, they frequently made their own.
Cool. So there's this big classic gaming movement now where people appreciate the oldest video games now, like they are artifacts of history.
Well, people still have fun playing it. I mean, it's not a super wonderful game, but it's still engaging. And it's remarkably bug-free. There are no outstanding user complaints. Support is still available.
So what do you think this video game industry in the U.S. is now a $21 billion industry?
I'm not much of it.
It's pretty cool that it started here.
But one of the features, if you look at video games and movies, they have this huge string of credits. We just have about 4 people on the credits here.
Yeah, that's cool. That's sort of like what it takes to do an iPhone game now, though, right?
Trying to do Spacewar on a modern computer is much more work than trying to do it on the old hardware. The old hardware is ridiculously simple. I can explain to you how to drive the display in one paragraph. You put the X coordinate in the accumulator, the Y coordinate in the I/O register. You give the display instruction. 50 microseconds later, you can do it again. And that's all there is. You get one spot per display instruction. Very simple.
Well, congratulations on getting this restoration up and running here. It's great. Thank you very much, Steve.